بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, many of our, or most if not all, of our Sunday night questions and answers usually are revolving or have been revolving around the topic of salah and tahara, purification, wudu, etc. Today we're going to make a little change and talk about a topic that is often incredibly misunderstood, yet is very, very important. And that is some of the signs of the Day of Judgment. Some of the asharat as-sa'a, as the scholars refer to them, the signs of the impending Day of Judgment, Yawm al-Qiyāmah. There are many, many verses in the Quran which make reference to some of the signs of the Day of Judgment. And there are exponentially more narrations of the Prophet ﷺ speaking about the Day of Judgment and some of the changes that will happen on earth, some of them good, some of them bad, some of them neutral, that will articulate the closing in of the Day of Judgment. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim was narrated to have given the longest khutbah that was ever recorded for him on this topic exactly. In Sahih al-Imam Muslim, the companions narrated that the Prophet ﷺ got on the minbar and he started to speak about the beginning of creation. And he continued to speak until Dhuhr came. He came down and led the companions in Salat al-Dhuhr. Then he went back up on the minbar until Asr and came down and led them in Asr, and then went back up on the minbar and continued to speak about the Day of Judgment. The companions said until he led the people of paradise into paradise and the people of hell into hell, and then he led the companions in Salat al-Maghrib. So in this, the Prophet ﷺ dedicated an entire day to this topic of occurrences and things that will happen. Why are we told about what will happen close to the Day of Judgment? There's a lot of reasons, many of them. But one of the most important of those reasons that these prophecies exist in order for the Muslim to always understand where he stands in the progress or regress of society and in the timeline leading up to the Day of Judgment. The only thing really left of this world is like that which is left in a day after Asr, just before sunset. There are a few narrations of the Prophet ﷺ having said that, but more importantly, a number of companions have mentioned that as well. This is such a broad topic and such an important topic that scholars have dedicated entire volumes, entire books just to this topic. And as a matter of fact, some scholars were known for specializing in this topic. This was a niche or a field that they felt was so important that they would dedicate their time to collecting the narrations and refining them and mentioning their chains of narration, etc. Al-Hafidh ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, wrote an entire book, and it's one of the most voluminous books on history, known as al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, the beginning and the end. And he wrote in that book from the creation of the throne of Allah all the way to his day, to his time, the history. And then he added a 16th volume to that work, which he named An-Nihaya fil Malahim wal Fitan, the end, the book of the end times in wars, battles, and tribulations that are to come. Now, the problem with this field is that many narrations that are in this field, some of them are weak, some of them are fabricated, some of them are from the people of the book, some of them are from the Torah or the Injil, some of them are just statements that were made by scholars and confused to be words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So unfortunately, it's a field that in our modern time, a lot of chatter is going on around it, and always people try to incorporate whatever prophecies they see and make it specifically about their time or their place. And this is one of the common mistakes that is made. You know, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaks about the Dajjal. So the computer or the television is invented, and then it's like the television is the Dajjal, you know, because one eye, it just has one, you know, screen, and that's it. And in order to try to squeeze that to make that fit, you have to seriously distort other narrations and other verses and so forth to try to fit that. This is a common mistake, and a lot of wacky ideas have come up and cropped up in the past 20, 30 years regarding these things. So it's unfortunately a topic that's very compelling. It draws people in, it's very attractive, but it's also very abused by many speakers, by many people. They introduce things into it and ideas and so forth that have been rejected by the scholarship of Islam. But many of these narrations that speak about the end times, the most important and the most critical of these narrations are found in Sahih al-Bukhari and also in Sahih al-Imam Muslim. They have entire books in their authentic compilations dedicated to this, called the Book of the Signs of the Day of Judgment, al-Fitan, etc. One of such narrations is in Sahih al-Bukhari. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Yushiku an yahsir al-Furat an jabalin min dhahab, yaqtatilu alayhi an-nas, kullun yara nafsahu annahu sayakunu man ya'khudhu hadha al-dhahab, yaqulu sallallahu alayhi wasallam, faman shahidahu minkum fala ya'khudh minhu shay'a." He says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that near the end of time, the Euphrates River will uncover a mound of treasure, of gold. And that people will start to viciously fight over this mountain of gold. Out of every 199 will perish in their attempt. But here's an important point that he says. He says, each one of them assuming that he will be the one to get the gold. So imagine this, out of every 100 people, 99 of them will perish. In spite of these daunting odds, right? So if we all were to be there and we were to attempt to take of this gold, 99 out of 100 means that most definitely none of us is going to be the one that is going to get it. These are very poor odds. If I told you this plane has a 99% chance of crashing. But if it lands, you'll be very rich, right? Because of what is at stake, which is money, people will go with those odds, each of them thinking that he is the main character of the story of Earth, the story of the world. He is the hero, the camera is following him, he's the one. I was meant for this, I was born for greatness, I was shaped and prepared for this. It's me, I'm Aladdin, I'm the prince, I'm all that, right? So 99 out of 100 will perish. This narration really articulates something about the way people think at the end of days. In the end times, the way people think. Meaning, I'm willing to kill anybody for the sake of being wealthy, becoming wealthy. Blood is a small price to pay. Killing another human being for riches. And in spite of those odds, risking my entire life, everything, just for the opportunity to perhaps be the one who comes out on top. Now, this would never be a problem in certain times when people valued things like family and honor and things like that. They would not be willing to kill and spill blood and fight and put themselves and their souls at hazard for something like this. But near the end of time, people will become so warped in the way that they think that this is worth any price. It's worth my life and my blood to be spilled, and it's worth everyone else's blood and life to be squandered, and everyone else's blood to be spilled for the sake of possible riches. Another benefit that the scholars take and derive from this narration and narrations like it is that near the end of time, the attitude of people will shift and their priorities will start and end with money and fame and wealth. And that wealth will become something that happens overnight. This is very unnatural. Usually when somebody is wealthy in past days, maybe 100 years ago even, someone is wealthy, this means that this person comes from a family which generations upon generations have built up that wealth, right? People are usually born into wealth. The idea that someone could be poor and come from a poor background and then suddenly, within a year or less, become super rich and ultra rich overnight, this is one of the signs of the hour that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that money will be something that comes and goes overnight. People that come from generations of wealth may overnight become suddenly poor, and people that come from generations of poverty may overnight become very wealthy. And so the Prophet ﷺ instructed us, because just knowing what things are going to be like is not enough. He instructed us. He said, so whoever of you happens to be there, do not take anything of this treasure. So he prohibited to take any of it. If you happen to be there and the Euphrates River uncovers a mountain of gold, don't take 1 penny from it. Not one piece, not one dime. Even if you didn't have to pay for it, even if you didn't have to struggle for it. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited taking it. Why? Because if we have the intention of taking it, if it comes to us, this means that we are feeding into the insanity near the end of days, near the end of time. And this insanity is based and built on the worship of wealth, the worship of the material world. So this is one narration that many of us perhaps have heard. It's been distorted. It's been distorted by people. Sometimes people read this and they say, the Euphrates River uncovering a mountain of gold? Oh, that must be symbolic. The Euphrates River here must mean the region, or the people, or the Persians, or the Arabs, or whatever. And the mountain of gold must mean oil, because oil is referred to as black gold, right? So it must be oil. So it must mean that the Arabs will find oil. This is a very silly way of interpreting these things. And this is the result of somebody straining himself, trying to make sense of something that hasn't come to pass. How can we understand it if we don't see it happen? This doesn't make sense at all, and based on that interpretation, that means that it would be haram in Islam to buy or sell oil, and that's absolutely not the case. So there are many misconceptions about this. If a person wants to read about this topic, the best book to read on this is Sahih al-Bukhari, the book on the signs of the hour. After that, Sahih al-Imam Muslim. After that, if a person wants to read a little bit more, you can read that book of Ibn Kathir rahimahullah that was translated, the book of the end. However, not every narration in that book is authentic. He just compiled all the narrations. So the print that was published by Dar es-Salam is the best and most sound of those prints. So this is an example of that topic, an example of many of the issues that the Prophet ﷺ dealt with in that field. So if anybody has any questions in the future or anything about that, inshallah, feel free to ask. And with that, we will conclude. والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.